Now with that, Kyle, I think we can get into our main topic, tokens on the metaverse. In the metaverse, I think we've categorized in our prep notes here that we've got 6 different types to go over with you here. So please bear with us. We're going to try to break all of this down. The goal here is to help everybody understand all the different types of tokens that now exist. Since over the last 4 or 5 years, they all never even existed. So Kyle, why don't we start off with the original? Bitcoin, I think, was the original, cryptocurrency that came into existence. And it was the original sort of educational tool to tell people, what is blockchain? What is this new form of money? So tell us, what about Bitcoin?
Right. So this is awesome. So we're talking about metaverse economy, right? There's many different types of tokens. And as you hit on, Bitcoin is really the first of the crypto commodities. So you look at gold in the physical world that kind of acts as that standard level of value, even though we don't actually use it for a whole lot. It's kind of just like the standard that everybody agreed upon is that thing that's basing everything to. So that's kind of where Bitcoin has taken hold in any decentralized application in the metaverse, is acting as maybe a currency, but also kind of as that store of value where this is kind of the rock within the storm. And obviously it has its own volatility pieces as well, as many like to cover and talk about. But this is a cool opportunity, and this started, 2008 after the financial crisis, and now has been underpinning currency transactions on the internet ever since.
I know, it's just an incredibly cool concept, and definitely raises a lot of flags because it is this idea of decentralized, non-government controlled money. And that was a big idea, so big now that it's over $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin out there. But I think that moves us into our second evolution, which is what we saw as we saw different blockchains arise, different versions of Bitcoin, really focused around their consensus mechanism. How do they validate and how do they manage their data, and how can people program into those blockchains? And that's where actually Ethereum, which many of you probably watching know about, enabling this new evolution of smart contracts. And it also, I think, Kyle introduced this concept really that also Bitcoin uses, but this idea of using the underlying token within the blockchain itself. So you have to use Ether in order to transact onto the platform, which of course means that we now saw sort of what this introduction of layer 1 solutions, right? This idea that this is our base layer. We can use Ethereum to go ahead and build other applications on top.
Different protocols, different blockchains can accomplish different tasks. Bitcoin wasn't made for billions of transactions like we covered with Visa. It was made to be kind of that rock of the system and existing from the beginning. So we needed to create other solutions that were going to fit different needs and use cases. That's where you're seeing a lot of these other assets, including Ethereum or Cardano or Tezos or all of the other ones, are really inter-protocol assets that allow for these systems to function and are more scalable, I think, than what we're seeing from the original option of Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And that's where you're seeing a lot of these new applications being, introduced on these new different types of blockchain elements out there. But one of the issues that I think the market saw and tried to deal with is all of this volatility, right? We're talking about entirely new sort of digital assets being used in different ways, but certainly not tied to any specific, real world value, right, Kyle?
Right.
So actually what we saw happen was the introduction of stable coins, which is actually an industry that is now over $130 billion in size. We're talking about real world money, go ahead and being tokenized, put onto the blockchain so that you can use a stable coin, a stable store of value in the ecosystem. So this actually was, I think, a new tool that actually led to the advent of a lot of these new applications in decentralized finance that we've seen.
Exactly right. Now you can finally transact in the metaverse using US dollars, the thing you're familiar with, without having to get them from your credit card, right? You can get it into this ecosystem. You don't need to have your assets leave the ecosystem even if you need US dollars. And with some of these credit cards and things, you can actually pay using stablecoins in the real world as well, furthering that bridge between the two assets. And so that's where it's really interesting. And as we move forward past stablecoins, we go to our next thing. This has been the hot topic of 2021. This is NFTs, non-fungible tokens. The idea that you can have art, you can have a collectible, a one-of-one thing that everyone can see publicly, everybody can have access to it, but everyone knows that you specifically own it, and that is your specific thing. A certificate of authenticity, if you will, membership community is kind of how we're seeing it as well. And so these things have really taken off in the metaverse. metaverse because of gaming. Gaming is pioneering this idea of a metaverse in terms of having a ecosystem and things that function and transact inside of a virtual world. And so, of course, with those things come the art, the rewards, the benefits that you want to get from playing or participating in that ecosystem. And that's where we're seeing NFTs really taking off.
And we've seen that market explode, all kinds of new use cases being introduced. And of course, that leads us to our second to last version, which is actually governance tokens. So this is actually the idea where, in fact, many NFTs and many different sort of crypto communities have come together and said, how can we make an organization that lives on the blockchain? And that's what they called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And essentially, it is designed to create different applications for a community to come together. But of course, one of those tools that's needed for everyone to operate in a digital environment where someone around the world can be in the same DAO as Kyle and myself here in Miami, but we all need to be able to vote. And that's where tokens come in, specifically governance tokens. That's our fifth type that we're identifying now. I think you'll probably start to see this term come more and more into play over the next year or so. But we actually saw a recent example of it. Maybe you heard of the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States was actually recently up for sale through Sotheby's, one of the 13 copies, I think, available, two available privately. And what happened was, of course, not everybody can afford to bid on the Constitution. So what happened was the crypto community came together and formed a DAO. And the way that people were able to participate was you could go ahead and, pool together Ethereum, and they could go ahead and try to potentially buy it. But what happened was they didn't win it. Ken Griffin won the bid.
Again.
So what happened was they launched governance tokens to go ahead and release those tokens back out to individuals and now participate in different ways. And that's just one application. But that's a different thing than an NFT. An NFT is meant to point towards one thing. Then the whole point is this keyword of fungibility. So in our DAO world, we have governance tokens that are the same value as whether Kyle has one or I have one. But in the NFT world, there's only one token. Only one person can own it, only one wallet can own it, and therefore it is non-fungible, and that's what creates its own value attached to that.
Absolutely right. I think that the easiest way to look at it, as you mentioned so eloquently, NFTs are kind of that unique identifier for you specifically. Governance tokens are kind of like if you fractionalize the board seat of a company. And so we all got to decide majority rules or however we want to decide inside of this system how these votes are placed. You can help make decisions for the organization on behalf of the community members. And then finally, number 6, the token that gets us really excited. If you're listening, you can probably guess it by now. It's a security token. We're talking about the stock market of the metaverse, right? You've got decentralized applications that are performing all these tasks without manual oversight. You've got the governance tokens where people are actually helping to participate and govern the future and direction of the platforms and protocols being built. But then the actual assets that are underlying, the value that's being created, investors can invest and participate alongside all those other investors and people in the ecosystem. So think about it kind of that way in terms of having an actual underlying asset, an investment that you're making into real estate, into art, into real world assets, into companies and the products that they create, into goods and services, all those different things you can invest directly into and get a profit, a revenue stream, or a potential future cash flow out of it. And so that's really where security tokens fit into this whole ecosystem.
It's an amazing, amazing innovation in the metaverse. We're talking about now over 2 trillion, sometimes 3 trillion, depending on the market cap, in different types of tokens and assets that now exist. New innovations that never existed 15 years ago, and now they are 3 trillion of the entire ecosystem. That's crazy, but it's not as crazy as what we think with security tokens. Investments are everywhere in all forms: real estate, art, royalties, stocks, private companies, public companies. That world is over $500 trillion in size. So whether you look at this new crypto innovation as just getting started, or whether you see a much, much larger, bigger opportunity like we do, we're going to start seeing all of these different types of tokens get used in radical new ways in our daily lives. And I hope you learned something from this. And we're always happy to answer any questions and happy to answer any feedback that you might have on this topic.
I think that wraps up an amazing episode. Thanks to the whole team, the production team as well, for putting together an awesome episode. If you want to learn more, you got to subscribe on YouTube. You got to follow us on social media. We're always pumping out clips and resources and articles and awesome educational content. You can subscribe to the newsletter as well on our site, stomarket.com, to find all of the resources you need.
In fact, Kyle, we're doing a bunch of giveaways this month. We love the holidays, so definitely check those out on Twitter and Discord. And meanwhile, hope to catch you next week, and happy tokenizing.